Boards. So having previously left off with this much of Euro map worked upon, borderlines redrawn, terrain types painted out. Let's continue. And it's also completed, well, tenuously completed. Looked at and then walked away from for quite a while. Had drawn up a mountain texture. So if I just go ahead and select exactly where mountain color is across everything. Then go ahead and smash down a new layer. And to that layer, go ahead and paint a pattern. Fill range. Is something masking this? Alright, so I did create some lines just now by doing that. Alright, I'm in... Alright, the problem is I'm using an ordinary pen right now. Get back to some manner of textured brush. What tool puts this into reality? Probably should have spent a moment reacquainting myself with the UI. Alright. Sweep all of that clean. Options. How do I get you to apply pattern? Pattern of picture of small mountain exists. How much has been done? Found it. There's mountain. And yeah, let's dive in there. From our remote orbital perspective. That's not too bad of a texturing. Maybe drop that to like half opacity and it'll be reasonably unintrusive. Seems about the right density. Like, firmly hint that there is mountain here. All the way across the surface. And then it just needs to be unintrusive enough that you can write map data on top of it and not have to worry. A half. That ends up nice and gentle. And then I can lock that down and not worry about it for a while. Since I did do a bit of housekeeping on all the layers that are in this document at this point, got many of them grouped up for easier looking at. Your selective blanking on. And so planes are untextured, and that seems fine. Planes are planes. They're also the most abundant terrain type, and frequently in very crowded parts of the board. Just leaving those out seems sensible. Yeah, I'm fine with bits of the little mountain being cut up by the borderlines. That's true to source. You can especially see with all the adjacent mountain provinces here in Spain that this is approximately exactly what Philippe did with the original. There's just an even grid of this terrain graphic over and over again, cut to the appropriate shape. So, planes are playing. Then there's texture to grab, well, to reconstruct for wood, for swamp, and for sand. But to go in there and look at it, it seems like the wood's texture is just a little bit of airbrushing. Just a tiny bit of darker kind of fluff. The question would be how to translate that. For the other ones, yeah, sand just kind of has some dunes, some ripples. Swamp has some weird, stringy swamp plants. Those should translate pretty simply. Wood, though. When I went with a darker base color for forests. Now let me just grab specimen off of the board. All the way. So this is the brightened up copy of that layer. There's the slightly more drab one. That is the raw scan. That gives me a bit more contrast here. Makes it easier to see. Oh yeah, these four globs here. That's the texture. That's the extent of the shape. You can see that repeating. Now let me just copy this out and we will begin anew. Well, for first sort of resume, yeah, let me just go get 128 by 80. That's the size I made the mountain. So just go ahead and create one of the same. And we'll see about flipping our perspective over to that. Get this file saved so the window will have a proper name. Then we get started with wood. And so we can have a good reference backing here. Let me go grab that color. Exact shade of green I was using for just forest terrain over on the main board. And then just go ahead and, yep, that in. There we go, get my my tool control panel properly docked. So, for the time being, still being worked on in game. So what if I just kind of airbrush on? How will that look if I just grab a brighter green and then just kind of... Okay, for one... Yeah, this is behaving more like it. This isn't, you know, 1993 spray paint tool. We're looking for something more fragmented, more grody. Which might not be all that ready-made. Environment, let's see. I have a couple of... Well, that's not... That's not... So the eraser picking up on what I'm trying to do here. The eraser has some chunk to it. The brush just didn't get the memo. Alright, there we go. So if I were thinking proportionately here to the original texture, got like a chunk here, and then there, and over here. And then these two corners left mostly open. Yeah, if I just kind of poke with this tool. Individual nudges. Small bites. Or I suppose at this point we're not trying to go for like an abstracted image of a tree. but more like the taste of looking down on a forest from the air. I am actually creating some sort of light to medium woodland texture. For which the base color that I had chosen earlier, that is dense wood, and I'm subtracting from it with these brush strokes. I'm carving clearings out of it, or injecting trees back in. And it's probably going to look quite obvious the moment I tile it. Unless I go out of the way to try and synchronize parts of the edges with each other. Fortunately, it's pretty smooth workflow to just kind of grab this and throw it over into the pattern portfolio. I think a starter lazy way to do this will be to just shore up the perimeter here. And round out the corners. End up with like a series of ovals. This has a nice grassy look to it. Wound up with a pretty nice, simple range of color. From green to other green. Not a bad look. And I'll just go ahead and export that. As wood dot pattern. That's what wood looks like when it's alive. From certain angles. Pop back to the map. Zoom a good ways out. And select by color all the woodland. Well, yeah, the main thing is going to be how whatever I decide on looks up here. The two main clusters of continuous woods provinces. South Germany and then Baltics on up into Russia. Now, go ahead and create a layer for it to inhabit. Alright, so there's my very obvious corners that come out of this as it looks right now, but that aside, dive in there and get a sense of it. And I think from reaching this now, we can kind of see the rationale behind the density that the other one had, because it's as small and as repeatedly tiled. So by just choosing to make most of the space be some background color, which I suppose I will, like, pivot towards the lighter shade, maybe? I'd gone with the darker base color to make it easier to put text on it. Make it readable. Back over to the wood bench. So if I just generally thin out the light parts. Try to have one bit that crosses the perimeter. If I can achieve, like, even one of those convincingly. Probably not a corner piece, though. That'll have a hard time looking convincing. Alright, so there it is, a little more mulched up. Export that again, and then pop back over. Alright, so there's wood mark 2. It's a step in the right direction. Alright, yeah, so that. Yeah, that's what I was expecting would happen from doing anything near the corners. Probably thin those out entirely. But otherwise, for kind of the bulk of it, if you just kind of cover up this, the tiling is much less obvious now. And it's just kind of fuzz. Which looks very odd when you put it next to the very discrete single cartoon Tooth Mountain. That's with intolerance, though. That's true to source and theme. And yeah, so that jank is caused by this bright patch and this bright patch colliding. Thin those out a little more. Yeah, then the four corners will instead create kind of a large neutral space that's still rounded a bit on all sides. And like, yeah, concave in some directions, but convex in others. Yeah, now we're getting somewhere. Now that's texture. It's still mostly dark, so that should be good for text visibility. And apparent brightness is easily tuned by just adjusting the opacity on the layer where I put the textured version. As with the mountain, like here it is at half. And now that just blends more smoothly. Now it is deeper, richer. And it just lives on its own numerically adjustable layers that can be tuned anywhere from yes to hardly at all. Just adds a bit of grit. Actually, wait, hold on. Just notice I left in these reference lines on the mountain texture. I was using those to judge where I should position things. Those shouldn't be there. Let me take that grit off, and then those will look less artificial. Just resaving it and exporting it. Patterns folder. I'll have to go through this whole color selecting process again. Snap back out to space. Space, yeah, space. A good view there. And fill with pattern. Yeah, there we go. Get rid of those lines. These are still kind of discrete cartoon mountains, but I could toy with that as well while I'm here. Kinda... If I thin out the lines, flatten them a little bit, maybe. Go ahead and resize this window. Here's Mountain. Old friend. What I do to alter Mountain? You mind Mountain Classic, which also used a lot of empty space, so I could also thin out the overall number of mountains. If I removed that one and this one. Yeah, just kind of suss out a brush size for a moment. Alright, let's think about mountain shape. Leaving a bit of dirt around some of these stripe pixels. That will help. That adds a bit of irregularity. 70% for brush. Instead of full intensity brush. And small it up because of that. Could they be casting shadows, these men? These now slightly irregular because I've thinned out the grid mountains. If I make them less of a grid. Like, okay, these ones are going to stand out because they are just a horizontal line. The eye is immediately going to grab that. If I make it 3 mountains on a not quite diagonal, Hmm. 4 mountains that have been kind of squashed. Revisit the whole concept of mountain. Okay, helpful direction I can think of moving here. Let's just go grab a stock photo of an alpine mountain. That's the proper methodology here. All mountains everywhere and every when will just look like some specific alpine peak. That's the way to do it. Which to go ahead and share with the class. That's quite big, this image. And I scale that down to, yeah, human resolutions. Here is 1 Alps. The Alpine Atom. Yeah, we can have both pointy mountain and kind of long ridge mountain. Those can coexist. But yeah, that might be the key to making this look less static and more smooth. We have a point, then a hump. Some kind of wide mountain. Too big. I'm gonna eraser out most of this and start almost clean. Effectively, entirely. Hey, Brush, why are you so square? Okay, you still look rounded. You're still acting rounded. You seem a bit square, though. Booth. Every mountain on the world will be exactly this one mountain. Yeah, kind of. The toothy bit and then the lengthy bit. The incisor and the molar of the mountain. The problem, of course, being that this reference image, carries on with yet more mountain off that way and off that way. And if I actually connect this and make it loop, then that's going to look very obvious. Unless it's teeth all the way along. Now that would probably look even more weird than the first draft. The beta art. Surely I can introduce some level of, like, mountain noise. We'd get away with adding some snow caps, some white bits to highlight. Be more of a range to work with. It is an intensely handsome mountain. It's the kind of geography that when you see one of it in person, it just activates something deep in the brain meat. Inflicts that awe and grandeur, even when it's just sitting there being a rock. There's something wired way down in you that just kind of said, whoa, big. It's going somewhere. A postage stamp is forming. The question is then just, will it look any good when it's been repeated over and over again across both the Alps and the Pyrenees and everywhere else? The Highlands, just all of it. Kind of dent in this ridge a bit. And peel that back a bit from the edge of the tile. Likewise over here. Try to avoid having any lines actually touch. This portion of the mountain has become some sort of weird giant mole. Big sleepy mole. Laying there. Paws. Got some kind of snout. Powerful mole mountain. Maybe also a bird. I could see a bird in this. Okay, I'm gonna lock this into place for a moment. It's a nice little sprint of carving a landscape. And let me just... Come on, grab the right window. This one, so I can kind of get all of that into frame. Export that to mountain dot pattern. And we pop back over to the main board. From space. I like it. I mean, the repetition is pretty obvious. With a little bit more connective tissue, I could link the sides of the tile. Or if I could scaled it down. Yeah, mountain mostly lives down here, all throughout the middle. Kind of extrude it a little further in all directions. Yeah, at half opacity it blends nicely. Just a couple of teeth show up on the layers. If I were being very high effort, I would just try to like sculpt separate bits of mountain to fit each of these regions and be the right shape. And just be here for days, painting too many individual mountains. If I inflict valley where these gaps are, do something to create low points. Like, add little bits of white highlight to the peaks and ridges, and then darken everything down in these gaps. That's a direction. Fairly handsome mountain. And I could always then go in later and manually tweak specific locations. Just getting a foundation down. And just gonna go ahead and inject a separate layer here. So I can quarantine different colors from each other. Management purposes. Yeah, so if I just like whiten up, frost the mountain a little bit, clear that these are the high bits. Just not so much that I compromise the overall warmth. Just to have more contrast between, like, there's going to end up being some shaded in valley that's all up here and down here, the perimeter of the tile. I can create irregular alternating bands of light and dark. Back onto dirt layer. Like, extend kind of a limb out this way. Or, no, I'm gonna leave that alone. Most of the space right now is across this corner and that corner. And from this void on down to the ridge line. If I just go ahead and create a shadow layer, into which I can kind of start to inject. Even more gently on the opacity. And just without really touching the underlying yeah, if I make some of this loop, and then use the presence of it to kind of lend an aura to the mountain. That little bit of a gradient will kind of help break up the white space. Gray space, rather. Turn up the brush size a little. It would probably be better to just do this with fixed known amounts of gray than trying to swat opacities back and forth. Take advantage of computer. Or take advantage of computers to smudge colors back and forth more effectively. Science. Okay, so first pass of highlights and shadows. Let's see what that does for making it repeat. Export that to mountain pattern, refresh. And look at map again. Alright, so at the moment that's more obvious, but that is moving in a good direction. Yeah, if I properly sync up the shading there, and then have, like, this line go even darker. And Anatolia and the COD cases are the best place to get a good, healthy look at this texture. Yeah, so before, after. Yeah, if I just deepen up the valleys and properly synchronize them. Maybe add a couple of little, greebles to the depths. Make everything kind of similarly toothy. It'd be nice to have a setup where I could do this in real time. Back and forth, like, immediately. Such a thing probably exists. Alright, so let me take my own advice here. Go to 100% on the brush and just sample that level of shadow. And paint it up here. And then sample this. And do our little bit of crossing here. Come on. Come on. Select properly. Alright, that's clearly not the color I'm pointing at there. What are you doing? Oh, without the lines, that also looks pretty nice as well. There's the shapes I put the highlights into. That's a nice blob. Soft mount. Alright, there we go. Now I've made it grab properly. There's our light patch to kind of press over the edge. Then I want to take some of this yet deeper. Alright, that's not really perceptible. Let me dial this a ways down. Maybe a bit back from that. I'll give it a chance as it is, given that we're also gonna, take this down to half that's applied to the table. There's another small step. And fill. Yeah, still some edge gunk to clean up. Getting close here. Yeah, plenty of misalignments along the vertical. If I extend that bump out onto this ridge, and then just clean up where all of these points contact. The corners also need to be harmonized. Yeah, fix the corner, smooth out everything about the gradient there, and let this mountain cross over. This one, yeah, they'll both link up well. And go even darker on the valley? Well, let me see. If I darken up the baseline there. Yeah, then take it a step further and just like on the source image probably completely blacken the valley, and that'll be about right. Mountain smithing. Put away the shadows for a moment. Unlock rain. A very small brush. And I want this peak. Get numerically precise there, so I'm pointing at 30 in the Y position here, 30, 31. Over to... That's the right spot to bring that. And then if this... Three. Let that extend out here and connect. And now, so this shadow, which is at 42, extend up here into this bit. That. Exactly this color. Cover both sides of the process. Far down is 51. And this edge is down at 63. I'll bring that shadow up a bit higher. And this at 68. The vertical splotch looked okay, right? The 109 to 107. I could stand to extend that out a bit. And then 90 to... Yeah, to 90, that one works. If it's still wrong, it'll show up cleanly when I go back to the tiling. And then let's just grab completely dark, blackening up for still. $74 over there. And then at 70 there. $6.9. And just be sure that the corner point there is fully blackened. on all sides. And back to the map. Fresh pattern, select pattern, fill with pattern. Alright, some further edges to fix. Yeah, both of those bright spots are misaligned. And this corner still needs work. The bottom right to the top right doesn't merge properly. The top part of the bright spot needs to get hemmed in a bit. That point's fine. This point needs a little bit of gunk on it. This bit's fine. Kind of a blemish there, but that's within tolerance. I could leave that in. Mostly these two. These two, and reining in this. I make that connect properly. That'll be good. How much information to put off table in a separate map? Probably most of it. There's a lot that'll depend on. Also, while we're looking at this, let me drop that back down to half. Yeah, that also looks alright at half. And from space, that's a bit weirder. Well, that's also because, like, at fractional zoom, that's going to create its own artifacts. Yeah, this is closer to being a sensible mountain. And the more texture I add, the more the completely untextured plains provinces are going to stand out. I'm entirely alright with that. That's working as designed. Alright, and we've reached the point where I will just go ahead and use the mouse for a bunch of these final corrections. So, terrain, this guy needs properly unify there, because, yeah, if I just draw a ruler line, there's exactly horizontal. Yeah, so from there to there, give a little extra. That will properly hook up. And then there's a couple of pale spots lurking on that edge, I guess. Just kind of smudge the whole thing to make sure. Alright, and then, so, definitive where these lines belong. Which I should be doing with the next color out. Yeah, this edge was very wrong. Need to absolutely pick a side that takes priority and let it get to work. Alright, back to the board. Still one more bit of gulf there. Although, that might be an acceptable amount of gulf. Just a little, just a slice, just a tooth going out into the gradient zone there. That's not bad, especially this is the low bit that's shadowed. That's one little, finger of rock that's just catching the sunlight. At whatever angle we're supposed to be viewing this mountain from. Space-wise. Yeah, that looks functional. With obviously a couple of segments where I would want to slide things over so that they aren't completely valley. I just centered the relevant portion of the mountain on each province. Yeah, that might be, Texture 1 revisited, bringing us to 2 textures. Wood, mountain. They look less... They look less mismatched. Slightly more matched. Means... swamp time. Show me the swamp. Get in there and take a swamp sample. Although, do we do that from... or from Venice? Where's our largest continuous swamp blob that I can use for this data? It might be the Nile Delta. Well, no, the Nile Delta isn't that large on this map. Though it is a pretty clean shot. Yeah, I think we take that. And go ahead and create our new 128 by 80. Save swamp. And yeah, get a color sample of the new base swamp hue. And just have that swamp selection ready. That's another pretty big swamp build. I think we'll do most of our testing via the Netherlands. That's a pretty capable swamp zone. Observe the Low Countries at 2x. For now, let's get over to the Bog Garage. Start doing some swamp engineering. Wherein the base swamp texture already has a pretty good idea of what it wants to be. Go ahead and paint it. So there's swamp color. Appropriately eye-searing. Bringing a cloying dampness to the eye. Give ourselves a swamp layer to work on. Swamp strata. We'll get ourselves a very scraggly slightly gray brush. So the original swamp texture is just kind of gnarly swamp tree. You know, it's wood, but it's got itself a bit of a stank limb going on. The gross wood that you can't make anything really useful out of. The tree that is probably more mosquito eggs by mass than it is wood. You know, the wood-dwelling mosquitoes. Found in the most dire of swamps. We got just like little horizontal hashes of irregular terrain gunk. Yeah, I don't think we need the sample anymore. The miasma comes from these trees. Trees that are evidently of ill humor. Question then of how many more of those should I have? Should I insert some other non-tree swamp log? Maybe. Some fallen bog wood. First, though, a couple more stank wood. Gotta reach over here and change the tape. The one swamp tree that has fallen down. and in doing so become strange wound surface of the bog. Fitting when the bog itself is a strange wound on the surface of the earth. All these other ones kind of wound up a bit wider than the first two. Nothing left to add, nothing left to take away. That swamp right there. Get that sent into the pattern bin. Swamp.pattern. And create the layer this lives on. Sure, everything else is properly quarantined, and yeah, refresh pattern list. There it is. Fill with swamp. There it is. That's what every wetland in the world looks like. That's the bog essence right there. All swamps the same. Back at 100%. Perfect. Got it in one. Reasonably true to the source material. Minimal liberties taken in preserving the swamp nature. Authentically damp. So, sand. Sand, and then just the possibility of maybe lend anything to the plains rather than keeping them flat. Probably just end up leaving the plains completely flat. There we go, just fade back the swamp texture a little bit. moderate that swamp. And yeah, just zoom on in here to the only desert tiles on the Europe portion of the map. Of all the weird things about Europa Zero, deciding that, like, all of North Africa, until you hit Tripoli, is plains. None of this is mountainous or sand, according to Philippe Thibault, 1993. This is completely smooth. There is nothing smoother than the surface of Morocco. A perfect frictionless plain. Frictionless, temperate, appropriately hydrated. Sand only begins after Tunisia, and then stops once you reach Egypt. Alright, so there's not a lot to the sand texture. It's kind of barely there. Another practically airbrushed thing of just a couple of lumps of slightly darker yellow. Still, I'll take the sample. We can get started on sand. Right, get the sample and get the color. Layer for raw sand. Sand sample didn't come through. Weird. Very weird. I'll start from scratch. What is there to take from the source material? It's sand. It's down there. In the sand. Yeah, just take the color sample and we'll pop over. Take that out. And then just apply the base. Get that chalk brush out, since that worked well for wood detailing. Let's see, where is he? Acrylic, bristle, chalk one. Where, yes, so if I just pop into a higher layer, then adopt a slightly brighter slightly more so yellow. And, God, don't. Get rid of that. Get rid of this box. That shouldn't be there. This layer is as big as anything else. There we go. Sand. So the source board had kind of like heaps, lumps, kind of rounded lumpules. That's not how sand do. Sand is essentially water. Sand is dry water. So really you should be looking for more of a wave texture. Just a wave that's too lazy to fall down. That's sand. Sometimes big, sometimes small. Damp or dry, sand is sand. Sand does what it does. So like, we have kind of a peak and a break, and a clear shadowed side. Kind of a ridge. We're gonna end up drawing a mountain again. All terrain is different kinds of mountains. That's just a fact of nature. Take a farther back perspective. Okay, trying and removing things is already doing a good job of just kind of generally muddying up canvas a little bit. And that could be enough for sand texture. Sand doesn't need to have any particular shape to it. Nothing in the corners. Dial back the opacity a bit more so I can kind of sift through the existing sand. Kind of massage it around until it looks vaguely right. Blur tools could also help with that. Put down a daub of brighter color and smudge it around. Yeah, that's more like it. Kind of try to make sweeping, arcing motions across it. Yeah, because this lump here especially, that's turning out quite nice. That looks like overhead photography of a bunch of sand. There's a bright side, a dark side, a ridge line, but all the details of it are smooth and smudged. That's what we need to be working towards. If this were red instead of yellowed, that would look very Mars photo. Add just the right shadows to convince people it's a face. Or a pyramid. It's just sand. Yeah, this is looking correct. Smudge with an irregular brush head here. That's the way to do it. As though I were just kind of scraping it with abrasive powder. For thousands of years. Yeah, that's sand. There's what sand looks like. A bunch of the edges probably need to be smooth. I expect we're going to be able to see where this tiles. Still, let's get over to the bin so we can take a look. Sand pattern. And right, I want to grab like to buy color, all sand. Give me 100% sand selection. Then we'll create sand layer. And fill with sand. Perfect. I can't spot the edge. That's sand right there. Everything it needs to be. It's sand. That's a 3x zoom. Let's pop back to 1. Yep. Yep, it's sand. Sand is there. The edge is around here. Yeah, because like, there's our one good dune, and that was near the middle of the texture. Yeah, that's the vertical edge. Yeah, that's the top bottom, that's the sides. But it is nicely blended in there. There's no sharp corners in it. It's just sand. Textbook sand. And that's without needing to adjust the opacity at all. Sand just fits immediately in one. If I soften up mountain a bit more. There's mountain at 30%. Zoom back in a bit. Yeah, another consideration as well for each of these is I could take the image I've created and scale it up or down. This mountain at like half size, so that the shadow line there, the valley is squished down a bit more. Yeah, at this intensity, but twice as often with the peaks. That'd also fit better with the scale of the details on, like, the swamp. Swamp turned out pretty excellently. The forest, is just a vague haze. Yeah, the mountain stands out for being more detailed than everything else I've put down so far. Yeah, swamp and sand, definitely done. Forest, I'm satisfied with how the forest fuzz looks. I could revisit it at a later time to try and make something more powerful, though. And then plains, the Jeff of biomes. If this were a little brighter, that would look like a grassland texture more. Plains, just dirt. Nothing else here. Completely vacant. The vast, sprawling nothing. Kind of interesting that there's no hills terrain type on the board. There's mountain and flat and nothing in between in terms of lump. Yes, let's do some mountain experiments. If I take mountain, save a spare copy of mountain, bring mountain 2 into existence. Now if I just select all and then scale down, having unlocked all the relevant layers, pop this down to half its original size. Nope, that just grabbed one layer at a time. I have scaled down only the peaks. Well, since I have the original safe and sound and I'm not planning to alter that yet, let me just flatten this. And now we scale. And then we replicate. and smooth out the resulting edges. Which, actually, let's go ahead and just do that with a pen. Yeah, I think the rest of this looks okay. Save this. And make this Mountain 2 dot pattern. Meanwhile, back at the Europe. I've got mountain selection, yeah. Mountain? Or, right, I have this occluded. I blanked it out to get the selection in the first place. So there's doubled mountain. Which does already reduce the number of times that mountain kind of collides with a small island the wrong way. Or, I think that's double. Is that double mountain? Hard to tell from the thumbnails which one is which. I could have given them different descriptions. Alright, yeah, there's Signal Mountain. There's Double Mountain. Small Mountain. Yeah, that smooths out nicely. Where the main thing that was really standing out and just kind of shouting, especially in like the far zoom out here, was all the parallel horizontal lines, all those ripples. On the rest of the textures, I've kind of wanted to mask those a little bit. And that's better. That's a move in the right direction. If I then take the individual valley and kind of bend it a little bit, that would probably do enough to break up the ridges. Kind of make the mountain flex, make the valley wobble a bit more. Do something to interrupt the edge again. Maybe just add another bright spot here, just paint in another peak. Although that would be difficult because that's the corner. I would need to be drawing a mountain across the 4 different edges of the thing. to properly fill that gap. Although, now that I'm in 4X mode, I can prototype one out here in the center, and then just duplicate it into the corners. Like, yeah, just locking down that back layer, and if I then... Just to kind of concept it out here, if I drew a wholly formed hill here just to break up that, then I could cut it into quarters and paste half of it there, half of it there, and so on. And that would fill all the space. And doing that exactly would achieve what I'm looking for with the stripes, because they'd no longer be stripes. I'd just have like this well here and this one over here, just two splotches that are kind of round and bended. So about this shape would achieve what I'm looking for. I could also offset one half of the underlying image a bit, scooch one mountain ridge down a little. I don't think that's as big a deal, though, having peak-to-peak lineup. That looked fine. The eyes weren't drawn to the bright wiggly bits, they were drawn to the valleys, to the deeps. I want to sculpt something to fill that gap. Just starting off with the white, since that will stand out more. Make it more clear where I am cutting out previous terrain. Draw the anti-mountain. Yeah, something like this. And yes, again, for the time being, all of this project has been occurring in GIMP. New image manipulator. Which, like most open software, is equal parts powerful and inconvenient. And generally work out to worth what you paid for. Alright, so let me shave back highlights a bit here. It can do anything, probably. Let's fish around, and someone's probably written a module. And if you don't find it, guess that means it's you. I'm gonna try to make Middle Mountain here not look too out of place. Which will be tricky when it's next to 4 exact replicas of the same mountain. It's the only one that looks any different. Four perfect clones that were drawn at twice the size and scaled down. Just gotta give the whole thing a sweep with the blur tool. Too much. About right. Yeah, pre-rendered background, actual sprite you interact with. That's what we're looking at here. That's not too bad. That's a starting point. Let's take it out into the wilderness and see how it looks. When it has also had the chance to be repeated 4,000 times. Drops in nicely. It's less pointy than the original mountain. It's a smoother mountain. If it also had a peak, like maybe over here. Also, right now, there's only one of it instead of 4 of it. Which might work better for making things irregular. I'm feeling like there's some middle ground I can strike with this extra mountain. It's like, okay, if I had a horizontal copy of it, then I'd be breaking up every other valley. I'd be breaking up every valley on every other row, and that would look similarly rough. If I did vertical copies, then I'd be breaking up every other valley on every row. That would look similarly rough. But if I do it diagonally, so that it's an alternating grid of mountain and valley, that would look probably similarly weird. If I sculpt a different filler mountain for each direction. It's like, so relative to a sample of one of our ones out here in the wild. So the one I put to the side will end up here. And there. And the one I put vertically will end up there and there. And the one I put diagonally would end up in these 4 valleys together. And those are my options for blocking those up. I can change up these together, and these 4 together. We do still have we have an edge line that was missed during cleanup. Alright, let's go get that at least. So that would have to be the outside edge. That's where that's present. That's the only place it could be, because we cleaned up the interior one. So, along here. And up here, just gotta sharpen everything about that. And just to verify that that worked out. Partially. Yeah, vertical edge. Vertical edge needs cleaning, other edge also needs cleaning. Careful, diligent task of polishing a mountain. Better? But still got some stank there. Although some amount of pixel stank is within parameters. Keeping in mind the source material. Some lack of polish is true to form. Oh, that mountain lands just very nicely on Cypress. Yeah, Middle Mountain hits a bunch of places that were previously all valley. That'd be another reason to just kind of prop up a couple more small mountains. Fill out all those peaks. That seems correct. Polish to a fine orb. Yeah, so that'll want some methodical, repeated looking at. Maybe acquire a reference image of a second mountain. Because that did a lot to shape up the initial peak. I think of some highlights that I could use to make this look more distinctly wood. The occasional little, like, upright bit of wood colors. Some browns, some grays. You know, overall these have turned out pretty good. And that's sand. Yeah, there we go. Zoomed in here, yeah, you can see the vertical limit pretty cleanly. It's good sand, though. Very tangible biomes. But yeah, I think I'm hitting a point of diminishing return, at least for yeah, for any like decision-making work like this. Definitely I should do something with these other valleys to finish breaking up the horizontal lines on the mountains. But I've spent enough time looking at them that, yeah, I just kind of end up waffling back and forth and probably go in a bad direction. But for now, those can just be there. It's a pretty good hit to near miss on painting up all this terrain. So for the time being, plains remain plain, mountain needs a tune-up, forest can use a touch-up, swamp is perfect, sand is perfect, and then I can get started on the ocean. If I can just find the... Okay, yeah, I also flattened out the base ocean, but yeah, there's I could add a little bit of waviness to the sea. Probably not that flat ocean works. Let's start thinking about, yeah, like Trade Center icon and storm cloud. Although those would almost more fit into when it's time to start putting the data layer back on the map. Labels and icons and border stank. Yeah, at some point after the heavy lifting is done, all sorts of, like, there would be room to either create or commission little individual details that could also be used to spice up the map. Since in some places definitely no, because it's already way too crowded, and all that room is needed for data. But yeah, for like expanses of sea, there could be a whale out here. Fish. There could be any amount of, you know, regional, additional, like, non-data bearing decoration here. Sneak some mountains in around the title card. Put anything out on the steppe. Taking the numbers off the map would make sense. That is part of what makes it so crowded. Also, the fact that every province both has its province name and the name of its capital city. That adds a lot of text. A lot of very crowded text, when really all the province needs to convey the information. The names fit. Names of provinces fit on the board, and that's fine. a name and then the appropriate dot for city, port, fortified port. I don't think the fact that the capitals have separate names ever comes up in the rules. That's just what the fort is in that town. I want to say the only time the name of a city ever comes up in, like, rules is you can squint over here at this stretch of barely legible swamp. That is where you can build St. Petersburg much later as Russia. You get to slam down a special token that is, here's Petrograd. And you get to upgrade the local fort, the local baseline fort for the rest of the game. Do some other things. Progress. Where, yeah, after those touch-ups to terrain texturing, I could start organizing the data. And then once the data is down on this, that's it. That's just it. Finished becoming usable. That's every functional piece that it needs to be the board on which a game is played. There might be room to keep the tax numbers on. That could be determined. That could be managed easily since we're in a layered image editing environment. That can all be formatted, slid, and positioned. Yeah. Europe. And then the whole process will have to start again for rest of the world. I could probably get away with reusing the terrain textures. I mean, that's also just what the rest of the world map looks like. It uses the same visual language. But I will have to draw out all of the clean border lines and what have you. Create clean copies of all the mechanic grids. One mountain might be enough to finish breaking up these lines. Yeah. Just a question of which one. Since from this far back, you can see that it's become one blob of valley. Diagonal Mountain is probably the right call there. To be determined. Under fresh eyes. Next time. That and more? Maybe.